behalf of whole of our ISRF team, I would like to extend very warm greetings to one and all those who have joined our e-lecture on tobacco cessation, Commit to Quit. Well, this e-lecture is especially organized on occasion of World No Tobacco Day, which was there on 31st of May 2021. We do celebrate this day, every year, in order to break the habit of tobacco cessation, and also to prevent one of the most, preventable causes of death in India. So ISRF is very glad to have expert panelists to whom we will meet shortly. And before going ahead, I would just like to give a very small and brief introduction regarding Innovative Education and Scientific Research Foundation. So ISRF is a non-profit organization and working with the goal to help researchers of all the fraternities to disseminate their research globally by publishing in peer-reviewed journals, by presenting in conferences, research talks, seminars, webinars, etc. Our main vision is to promote scientific research globally and provide a platform to the community that tends to improve the visibility of their work internationally. ISRF is an association of about more than 3,000 members, 7 different specialties, communities which publish around 16 scholarly journals every year. So for more details, please go through our website, www.isrf.org. So please do visit our website and to keep in updates with all the activities that this wonderful organization is coming up with. So with this note, I would like to start today's e-talk. So with the permission of our president, sir, shall we start with the inauguration?
Oh, yes, why not? Please proceed.
Yes, thank you, sir.
I would like to say something.
Yes, sir.
Right. So this No Tobacco Day campaign is celebrated as a day on 31st, but that does not mean that it is confined to one-day activity. It is a continued effort throughout the year, and this year the theme is Commit to Quit. As all of us are knowing, and as Dr. Ketki has just now said, various causes of death which are so prominent, maybe it is heart disease, maybe it is death from stroke, or even death from accidents. Cancer, of course, is there. So all 4 or 5 major causes of death, tobacco has some contribution. And if a single death takes place, I think there are more than 30 cases with related problems. I am very happy this evening that we have 2 very renowned speakers this evening with us, and who will be dilating the subject of de-addiction, that is Commit to Quit. In tobacco, there is a double C, and in commitment, there is a double M. So this CM tells us that let there be a continued motivation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Proceed ahead.
Yes, thank you, ISRF, for this wonderful video. So I would like to request our Honorable President and Patron, Dr. Jha sir, to again address the audience so that we can just go ahead for our speaker introductions further.
Right. Good evening. This is a great pleasure for me to be present here this evening on the virtual platform. So all the dignitaries present on the virtual dais and off this dais. Friends, the theme of this and No Tobacco World No Tobacco Day is Commit to Quit. And this commit to quit is something which has to be emphasized throughout the whole year. Now see, there has to be a greater motivation for a person who is addicted to tobacco, and it is not only tobacco, to whatever addictions you do have. And for speaking on this subject, we have two very learned speakers, Dr. Priyanka Engineer and Dr. Priyambada Sharma. So without delaying things, I would request Dr. Ketki to proceed further with the webinar.
Thank you, sir. I would like to request our co-patron, respected Nikita Pandit ma'am, to please say a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Ketki ma'am. Good evening, all dignitaries. And as Dr. Jha sir told that India has a big number of cancers due to tobaccos. So I'm glad that we have this session, and at the end of this session, we get some information about the de-addiction of the tobacco fixes. And I am also not taking much time of yours, and I just want to request you to go ahead with the session. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Nikita ma'am. I would like now to request our honorary secretary and also the organizing secretary, respected Dr. Amina ma'am, to open the further.
Good evening. Thank you, Ketki. Good evening, everyone. The main purpose of this yearly celebration of No Tobacco Day is to remind our public of the dangers of using tobacco in any form, whether it is a chewing tobacco or a smoking tobacco, and to join our conflict or the fight against this tobacco addiction. And I think dentists are very well placed because we are the one who can recognize the signs, oral signs of the tobacco chewing and the smokers. And as a team, we can help in motivating these person who are not able to drop this habit, in motivating through constant counseling, examination, so that the interest of dropping this habit is developed in these patients. I'm greatly thankful to IESRF to conducting this event and taking this topic of tobacco addiction to a larger forum for the discussion. And I think I'm also thankful to our patron and co-patron to considering this event as an opening event of this newly formed committee of IESRF. And I think this program itself will increase the awareness of this tobacco addiction among the community. And since it is quite prevalent, as been discussed by in the opening remarks by this moderator and our president also, this is one of the major cause of, one of the reason behind the mortality in India. So I think all the efforts that the effort behind these events are worth if the message commit to quit is well delivered. So I once again thank the organizers, IESRF, especially Nikita ma'am, for taking up this challenging issue as the opening event of this IESRF of the year. Thank you once again for joining and sparing time for this event. Thank you once again. Over to you, Ketki.
Thank you, ma'am. It was indeed a very good opening for this session. Now, I would just like to give a brief introduction regarding our most eminent speaker that IESRF today is really glad to have. So our first speaker for today is Dr. Priyambada Sharma. So Dr. Sharma ma'am is working as an assistant professor of clinical psychopharmacology and neurotoxicology at Center of Addiction Medicine. She works primarily in the area of drug toxicology. She is the expert member of World Health Organization for tobacco testing. She is working on collaborative projects in the area of drug toxicology with national and international agencies. She has published around 35 papers in the area of drug toxicology in national and international journals. So ma'am, we are very, very happy and fortunate to have you with us today. And I would like to request you to begin with our first lecture for today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all. So thank you. I thank all of you for inviting me for this opportunity. And without wasting much time, I'll start my presentation. Share screen. Nikita, can you, I think.
It is visible. It is visible now.
Okay.
Your screen is not visible. Your presentation is not visible.
Okay. Just a minute. Give me 1 second. I'll just do it. Huh?
Okay.
I'll go to desktop again and I'll share it again. That's what, no?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Just a minute. Sorry, we started earlier, but I don't know how I closed it. Just give me 1 second. Share, I'll go to desktop. I got it now. I'll start it now. Yeah.
Ma'am, can I help you to do the sharing for you if you want
Just please,
me to
please
do?
help me. Huh? Earlier we have shared. I'm very sorry. I'm taking too much time. Now it's open. Huh? Now we can hear.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So sorry for the inconvenience. So I'll be speaking on role of tobacco testing in context of the tobacco de-addiction. I'll start with the findings of GATS 1 and 2. As per the findings of GATS 1, we have around 19 crores adult tobacco users in the rural urban area, and every fifth adult in the use smokeless tobacco product as per the GATS 1 finding. So like as government has taken made a policy to reduce the tobacco consumption. So GATS 1 and GATS 2 report states that tobacco consumption has reduced by 6%. That in terms of number, that counts around 61%. And as per the new national health policy, the relative reduction in the prevalence of current tobacco has decreased by 15%, and they aim to decrease it by 30% by 2025. Now in the I'm sharing as per the in the next slide, if we see the all tobacco use out of the all tobacco products, which is around 28.6%, only 4% is the cigarettes only. And if we see the data of the parliamentary committee, it shows in the 1981 and 82, 400 million kg tobacco was used. and 19 and 20, 593 million kg tobacco is used. So now question arise when there is a decrease in the cigarette consumption. Why this? Why that overall increase of while there is a overall increase in the tobacco consumption. So what happened over the last 3 decades, the total share of the tobacco consumption has decreased, but because of the laws that put much taxation on the cigarette production and use, the illegal and cheaper tax inefficient tobacco products are emerging. So before talking about the tobacco cessation or quit tobacco, we need to know that what all these products are there, how they are being produced, how they are coming into the market. So keeping my presentation simplified, we have 3 kinds of tobacco products: smoke tobacco products, smokeless, and newer tobacco products. Smoke tobacco products, we all are well aware: cigarette, bidi, cigar, pipes, water pipes are there, and shisha are there. And these smoke tobacco products are well researched. We all are aware that what all chemicals they contain. They produces poisonous gases like ammonia, toluene, and butane. When being burned, they have toxic metal like arsenic, cadmium, chromium, and lead, and cancer-causing chemicals like vinyl chloride, benzene, formaldehyde, and potassium, then polonium. So the smoke tobacco products are well researched, and there is a list of all the ingredients present in them. But in India, question is that the illegal tobacco products, use of illegal tobacco products is on increase, and there is a decrease in the smoke tobacco products that are legal in nature. Now, the second category of the products is the smokeless tobacco products. I'm working with WHO, and I'm happy to share with you that in the Southeast Asian region, India is the only country who is doing analysis of the smokeless tobacco product. Like for the smoke tobacco products, we know what all chemicals can be there in that. All the smokeless tobacco products are most of the smokeless tobacco products are being produced in the small scale industry. There is no curb on them. Anyone, and it can be produced, but I don't know whether any legal formalities are there for that or not. Reason by reason, in every part of the country, the nature of smokeless product, the smokeless product changes. If whatever being used in the north is quite different from the south, and what are being used in the northeast is not, we are not aware of that thing only. So depending upon that, I have tried to classify the smokeless tobacco products in 3 categories: sucking, chewing, and other oral tobacco products. So in the sucking, gutka, khani, loose tobacco, maras, and snus comes. In the chewing, again, gutka, khani, mawa, and zarda, and tobacco come. And in the oral tobacco use, this godaku and mishri, which is a form of, which are sold as a tooth powders, gul and pan masalas are sold. Pan masalas are now, they claim that it is tobacco free. I'll come to this on the later part of my presentation. And as per the report on the Carcinogen National Toxicology Program, smokeless tobacco is the known carcinogen. So we need to be very careful about the use of the smokeless tobacco. I tried to make a list of what all ingredients are there in that. I'm also working on this but it was very difficult. And we have been informed by the other agencies that this is your product. You need to analyze, you need to educate your people. Who will do it for you? If it is being produced in your country, then you need to analyze it and tell us that what all is there in this. So as per my work, what I am doing with that, till date, we are able to detect 16 to 80 flavors are there that are being mixed in these products to reduce the harshness of the tobacco and make it more presentable for the new users. Nitrosamines are there, and for the other things, we are still trying to get a picture that what all is there in that. As per the research, whatever available till date, smokeless tobacco contains around 4,000 chemicals, out of which 32 are cancer causing, 35 are cardiovascular, 18 are immune related, 42 acts on our nervous system, and 41 are the others. So this is the scenario of use of smoke and less tobacco product in our country. Apart from that, this electronic cigarettes is the new device which is coming into the picture, and these are being sold as they are not as much harmful as the smoked or smokeless tobacco product. It consists of a liquid container, atomizer, and the body, and with the help of the heating cell, vapors are produced that are used by the user as the smoke only. This is called vaping or passive smoke, and it is also as harmful as the smoking and produce similar effects also. The effects of smoking, use of smokeless tobacco, smoked tobacco, and this electronic devices are same. They can cause cancer, other chronic disease, infertility. What all has been listed till date, all these products come to the can produce. Now, like what is the role of tobacco? What is the role of laboratory in this? And now the question comes to this. The role of laboratory in the tobacco testing is very crucial. It is in both the field, in the testing of the tobacco product, to train, to tell the authorities as well as to the user that what all is there in the product. And for the testing of the biological sample, it's also where the laboratory come into the existence. As I told you that testing of tobacco is not a easy job. It's a full-fledged laboratory is required for this, along with the certain permission. So NIMHANS has all the infrastructure and for testing smokeless tobacco especially, and we are still trying to get other instrument to be able to test the smoked tobacco, and and the smoke of for the testing of the smoke of the tobacco only, that smoking machine is required. So for that and metals, so we are in collaboration with the other agency to start the testing of smokeless tobacco also for all the product. But from the India, we are the only laboratory, and from the Southeast Asia, we are the only country who has the capacity to do the testing. Like now I would like to share the data, what we have analyzed. We have analyzed around 100 to 200 brands from all over the country and tried to set that what is the nicotine level in these products. So it may be helpful in the NRT when the patient is coming. At least physicians have some idea that if he's taking this compound in this quantity, so he may need that much compound amount of the NRT. So what we found that to the available smoked tobacco products, cigarettes contain 8 to 21 milligrams of nicotine per gram. BDs contain 7 to 30. Cigars contain 6.6 to 13, hookah 0.8 to 0.0, and we got some few samples of hookah from some high-end hookah bars. So because of that, I feel that levels are less. If we go to the rural area, there we may get the high tobacco thing. In the smokeless tobacco, the situation is very grim. Zarda contain 19 to 21.7 of the nicotine milligram per gram. Chewing tobacco, we can go from 6.9 to 26.1. Gul contain 22 to 31.2. Pan masala contains 0 But now pan masala, whatever I got in my area, with that, that tobacco sachet is provided separately, that can be mixed with the pan masala. So pan masala itself doesn't contain anything, but the sachets provide with them contains tobacco in the higher quantity. Khani contain 4.67, Goduku 5.81, and Khara is 7.37. So this is the role of laboratory to guide the authorities and to the users that this is the nicotine quantity that you are going to use with the with the use of tobacco. Now that now we will come to the patient part. So the metabolite of nicotine is cotinine, which nicotine enters the body and get distributed quickly throughout the bloodstream, and it can cross the blood-brain barrier also. And 70 to 80% of the nicotine is converted into the cotinine, and it is a direct agonist of nicotine ACH receptor and cause rapid release of adrenaline. So because of that, user feel a relaxation or activity because of this. So if we need to test the nicotine use, we need to, there are two procedures are available, either with the psychological interview with the patient, or psychological scales like Fagerstrom scale are available, or others are the biochemical parameters. So most of the time in our facility, they use the carbon monoxide breath analyzer to test the recent smoking, and other is the measurement of the cotinine in the biological fluids. Now, if we are coming to the biological fluid, then question arises that which biological sample should be selected, which is the best one. So as per the my research and my finding, all urine, blood, saliva, hair, nail can be used for cotinine testing. Depending upon our requirement, we have to select our sample. Like if we have to select, like since nicotine testing needs to be done on the frequent basis, so urine is the preferred sample. But if you have to test the if whether he is that passive exposure, if you need to check, then hair or nail can be checked in that. Nail can also be checked for the environmental exposure. Blood and saliva also we can nicotine can be tested, and for blood, because it's an invasive procedure, and saliva is also a good procedure. So I have done 2 studies with saliva where I find good correlation with the Fagerstrom scale and the patient use. Devices, I'll come to the devices available. So for the cotinine testing, now in the market, lots of on-spot testing devices are available, which can detect cotinine level in the sample up to a certain cutoff. Like if 150 nanogram is the cutoff, actually it is 300 nanogram. So it will come positive if the values is about 300 nanogram. So these kind of dip strips are available, which can be dipped into the urine sample, and a positive result will come like that in the form of a single line, and it will be able to tell that the values are above 50 nanogram. In the semi-quantitative devices are also available, where a line will appear along with the concentration. Like if we are doing in the pregnant woman who has second-hand exposure, in those patients, this kind of devices are generally used. These are easily available and can be procured from the online platforms also. And if we, for further quantification, if you have to go, then you have to opt for the laboratory who can do it. In the southern part of the country, we are the only laboratory who has capacity to test the nicotine in urine and saliva and other biological fluids as well. now we'll come to the how the tobacco cessation programs should take place. So I'm not an expert in that area, but to my understanding, few points I've tried to make. So first we need to educate the user about the tobacco use. Then community-based programs should be there. Then helping users to quit, for that counseling and other thing is required. I get lots of people, lots of children from the various school who start tobacco and other products unknowingly. So school-based programs are necessity of the time to teach our young children to stop, to train, to tell them about these are the gateway drugs, and we need to stop them there only. Monitoring and evaluation is also needed. That can be done through the de-addiction centers or the this kind of program only. And efforts also needs to be taken by the other things. So I'm not for the nicotine replacement therapy, few types of products are available. That are nicotine patch, nicotine spray, nicotine gum, or nicotine tablets are also there, and nicotine inhaler are there. From my point of view, these are all available in our tobacco cessation clinics. So to further enhance the tobacco cessation, so what steps needs to be taken? That all the mental and dental colleges should, all the medical and dental colleges should start the TCC programs. District hospitals should have this, dental clinics should have this, and the counseling of the TB patient is also necessary, because they are increasing the they are getting infection because of this habit, and the overall burden is increasing on the health services. So with this, I have come to the conclusion of this thing, and now session is open for the questions.
Thank you, Dr. Priyamvada ma'am. It was a great session, very informative. I really hope that every one of us has liked. So I would now like to request our patron for today, Dr. Jha sir, to extend plaque of appreciation to ma'am.
Oh yes. So the plaque will be displayed. I, on behalf of, am I audible? Yes. So I, on behalf of IESRF, have the pleasure for presenting you this plaque. You definitely have conveyed a very good discussion on the testing of nicotine, and I'm happy that you are one of the centers where this nicotine testing is done, especially in South India, if not all over India. And you have naturally drawn attention to nicotine testing even in passive smokers. And especially you have emphasized that during pregnancy, the passive smoking done by mothers and their harmful effects can be studied. Thank you very much for illuminating us on all those points. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to request our organizing chairperson for today, Dr. Vinod sir, to please open our next lecture. Do we have Vinod sir with us?
He is here. Can we open with Dr. Amin Khan, ma'am?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Mute yourself.
Yeah. It's my honor and pleasure to invite our next speaker for this event, Dr. Priyanka Engineer. She's even I don't have the CV with us, but as far as I know her, she's an MDS in oral and maxillofacial surgery, but she has quite an experience in tobacco cessation as well, and she's doing lots of consultancy in this field, in this domain in Mumbai, if I'm not wrong. May I have Dr. Priyanka on the dais for her presentation?
Thank you very much, ma'am, for the introduction. I will begin with my presentation. I'll just be sharing the screen now. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. At the onset, I would really like to thank the IESRF for giving me this opportunity of sharing whatever little knowledge I have about tobacco de-addiction with all the esteemed dignitaries present today. To be honest, what prompted me to take up this this subfield in our profession was to we have had a lot of patients of oral cancer that we used to treat during our post-graduation. And a lot of these patients, even after being operated for oral cancer surgeries, even in the post-operative period, were so addicted to their tobacco habit that a couple of them would continue their habit, and they had much higher chances of relapse of the disease as well. So at that point in time, when I had a word with a couple of the patients, I was told that we were never aware that there is something known as tobacco de-addiction available. We were not knowing that there is someone who can guide us, someone there to hold our hand. If possible, we would have quit long back because we know it was a bad habit to begin with. So tobacco de-addiction is a boon for people who are really motivated themselves and want to quit but need the help and are not aware of how to do it themselves. So coming to my presentation today, when we come to the word tobacco, tobacco has various forms that are available in India. These are lots of smokeless as well as smoke forms that are there. Recently, there are even e-cigarettes like ma'am already mentioned. There's a recent spike in the use of hookah, especially in youngsters in the urban population and in the older individuals in the rural population. Now coming to the nicotine addiction cycle, the whole problem around tobacco being addictive is due to the presence of this chemical known as nicotine, which is a major constituent of all tobacco products. So what happens is when a person consumes tobacco for the first time, there is a spike of nicotine in the bloodstream, which activates the nicotine acetylcholine receptors. And these receptors then release adrenaline, they release dopamine. All of these are targeting the pleasure pathway in the body. Because of this, the patient, the user generally feels a state of euphoria, gets a kind of a kick, the mood is elevated, the patient becomes more aware and more conscious and more sharp in terms of concentration. So at such times, what happens is the dopamine release gives a kind of a happy feeling to the patient. Slowly and steadily, as the nicotine levels in the body fall, the desensitized acetylcholine receptors further get inactivated, and the low dopamine levels will cause some sort of withdrawal symptoms, which in the initial stages of the usage of habit will cause something known as a very feeling of uneasiness. This feeling of uneasiness leads to the craving for what gave the happiness. So that is how the whole cycle of tobacco starts. Another thing that happens is once the dopamine release activates the pleasure pathway, the body gets used to it. The body learns and conditions itself. And to add to that, there might be environmental factors such as there is a lot of smoking culture in multinational companies wherein people take smoking breaks to bond over. So these are the environmental cues also that cause a patient to give in to their craving of any form of tobacco use. So this is basically how the nicotine causes a cycle of addiction. So to sum all of that up on the CNS, the nicotine is going to cause arousal or relaxation. It will enhance the concentration. it will also causes appetite suppression. Appetite suppression is one of the major reasons why you will see a lot of people in the entertainment industry using tobacco. Mostly the smoke form, because it cuts down their food intake and makes them lose weight. Apart from that, the changes it causes in the brain itself it leads to a certain level of tolerance. And once the tolerance sets in, there are withdrawal symptoms seen, which reinforces the habit, the usage habit. Then there is also craving and there is loss of control. So because of all these things, nicotine causes a very severe addiction in the user. Now coming to the impact that tobacco has on India. So we have such a huge production of tobacco in India, of which about half is used in India itself in the domestic sector, while the remaining 2 parts are exported elsewhere. Coming to the various forms in which they are used, so there's hookah, there's native forms such as gutka, bidi, there is chewing tobacco, there are cigars. All of these are also causing a lot of diseases. Now, patients today are aware that tobacco causes diseases. They know that it is a major cause of cancer. They know it is a major cause of chronic diseases. But just this knowledge alone is not sufficient to disengage them from their habits. Another important thing to note is that India is the second largest consumer and the producer of tobacco. Almost 1.35 million deaths in India annually are attributed to diseases caused by tobacco, and 26.7 crore adults, which also includes individuals of the age of 15 to 18 years, use tobacco today in India. In the year 2011 alone, we have spent almost 1 lakh crore rupees plus to treat the diseases that have been caused by tobacco in just the age group of 35 to 39-year-olds. 35 to 39-year-olds is the peak career-oriented time of an individual. If the individual is losing these years of his life, he becomes a liability to the family, and not only the individual, it is also affecting the entire family. Now coming to the need for tobacco intervention programs. The biggest need is that the future is at stake. Today, even youngsters are seen having gutka, tambaku, bidi, cigarettes, hookah, all of that. And another thing is that because this habit forms in the early years of their youth, they are wasting a lot of time, money, and they are losing out on their health during the prime of their life. Also, they are making other individuals around them prone to respiratory diseases by secondary and third hand smoking. The existing laws that are there by the government are not enough. To be honest, there are multiple reasons for this. Firstly, tobacco generates a huge amount of revenue for the government, because of which all the policies that have been designed by the government so far have got some sort of loophole. This loophole has always been exploited by anyone who wants to use tobacco. So like they say, where there is a will, there is always a way. So ban on smoking in public places, but honestly, how many persons on a daily basis do we see in public with cigarettes in their hand? There is a ban on tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship. But to counter that, entertainment industry has come up with a very simple statutory warning at the base of the screen: tobacco is harmful, do not smoke. That doesn't really help. When you see your icons on the screen smoking and indulging in tobacco, it does send the wrong message to the youth. Coming to the warnings on the tobacco packaging and the labeling, the warnings are absolutely misleading. Initially, there used to be a small scorpion, which was very misleading because ideally cancer is depicted by a crab. So the initial period, there was a scorpion, which was now changed, and now they have put a very tiny image, absolutely probably 1 by 2 square centimeter image of lip cancer that is such a close-up that is not very clear. Recent guidelines have changed and made the images slightly larger. But to what effect? People who are using these products on a daily basis are still continuing to use it irrespective of the warnings on the packages. Then there is definite ban on the sale of tobacco products within 100 yards of any educational institute, but 100 yards is not going to help. Recently, there is also a total ban on e-cigarettes, which is of some sort of relief. But apart from that, due to the n number of loopholes, tobacco use in India is still very prevalent. So as healthcare professionals, what is to be done from our end? This is what I feel should be done. Tobacco de-addiction has two parts. The first is behavioral management and the second is pharmacologic management, which has two parts again, one nicotine replacement therapy and the other being other drugs. So if you're wondering where you should start from, you can start simply sitting in your own clinic, in your own cabin. You can start creating some sort of awareness. You can have posters in your waiting room. You can have educational videos showing on the TV in your waiting room. Today, a lot of healthcare professionals are very active on social media as well. You can have a lot of social media posts, videos, blogs, live sessions, wherein you can try and pick up a small topic on a very regular basis and educate the common public regarding it. You can also have interactive sessions with children in the school-going age and adolescents. For school-going children, there can be programs for why tobacco should never be touched. For adolescents, there can be programs wherein they are made aware of the ill effects of tobacco as well as informed that yes, there are tobacco de-addiction programs available. Also, a lot of healthcare professionals are affiliated to various multinational companies as a part of their HR activities. They are empaneled with these companies. So I would urge all such healthcare professionals to also try and push for that company to become a tobacco-free zone. That is something that could really help. Then the next thing that you can do is provide some sort of counseling to the patient when they come to you. So any patient who is coming to any healthcare practitioner for that matter, this patient should always be asked about the habit history, which should include the habits of tobacco. It takes up 3 to 4 minutes extra of the consultation time to make a note of the patient's use of tobacco. So the use of tobacco, medical history and habits, all of this when taken down together will give us a brief idea about how addicted the patient is. Then in a very casual manner, it should be advised to the patient about the pros of quitting their habit and the cons of the habit they currently are in. Once you give this basic information to the patient, the next thing you need to do is assess how ready is the patient to quit his or her habit. Once you know the readiness of the patient, the next thing you can do is assist a patient who is willing to get the help from you to create an action plan. And after that, you need to arrange for regular follow-ups, because such a patient who is motivated and wants to quit the habit will need your continued support to maintain himself or herself on the path of quitting. So coming to how to assess the patients, the first thing we need to do for that is to understand how much nicotine intake they are taking. The common factor for the addiction is always the nicotine. So as ma'am has also mentioned, Dr. Sharma has also mentioned, it is important to know what tobacco product has how much concentration of nicotine in it. And based on that, we need to understand what is the individual patient's nicotine consumption on a daily basis. This is going to help us in a large way in designing the quitting plan for the patient. Now coming to the next important thing, we have the Fagerstrom nicotine dependence chart. So based on this, you need to understand a few questions. You need to ask a few questions to the patient and you need to score the patient accordingly. The first question of this is how soon on waking up does the patient need the first cigarette or the first tobacco? So the scoring goes, if it's after an hour, it is 0. Within 31 to 60 minutes, a score of 1. 6 to 30 minutes, a score of 2. And a score of 3 for within the first 5 minutes. Now the next question to ask is the patient finding it difficult to abstain from using tobacco in places where it has been banned, such as public places? So if the answer is no, the scoring is 0. And if the patient says yes, you score the patient as 1. Then what cigarette would you hate most to give up? Is it the first one in the morning or is it the others in the day? So this gives us an understanding of the immediate craving on waking up of the patient. How bad is the immediate craving when the patient wakes up? Because usually in my experience so far, it is the first dose of tobacco or cigarette in the morning that the patient finds the worst to give up. Then how many cigarettes do you smoke in a day, or how much tobacco do you use in a day? So based on the amount that the patient is using, we need to give the score accordingly. Then the next question to ask is how do you smoke more frequently during the first few hours of the day than you do during the rest of the day? Because over the time of sleep, the patient's nicotine levels in the blood must have fallen considerably. So how bad is the craving in the first few hours after waking up is another important thing to know, so that we can give the appropriate treatment to the patient. The last question we need to ask as a part of this questionnaire is that if you are even feeling sick, if you are unwell, and if you are not even getting out of your bed, do you still feel the urge to use your tobacco or your cigarette? So based on these questions, you score the patient, and the interpretation of the scores is as such. If the patient is 0 to 2, the nicotine dependence is very low. 3 to 4 has a low nicotine dependence. 5 is moderate. 6 and above is considered high. So 6 and above are the patients who will definitely need, in addition to counseling, some sort of medical help. Another thing that is important when you speak to your patients is you can have a standardized format made at your practice, wherein you note down at the first visit, you note down the patient's name, age, sex, occupation. You also put everything on paper for the patient, because that makes the patient knows a lot of things. The patient knows tobacco is bad for him or her. The patient is still using it. But if you see something that's written down, it's on paper, it's something that's measurable and tangible for the patient will have a certain sense of responsibility towards it. So you write down that, okay, if these are the medical conditions that are related to tobacco use that I can observe in you, say it may be high blood pressure, or it may be easy fatigue, not able to run for a longer distance appropriate to the patient's age. So it can be anything like that, that the patient, that will affect the patient, that, oh, I am not able to do this, or this is wrong with me because of my habit. That realization is what is important. Then the next thing you note down is the forms of tobacco which are being used by the patient, the frequency in which they are being used, and the duration for which they have been used by the patient. The next calculation you can do is you can roughly ask the patient how much money is spent over a period of 1 month by the patient on the tobacco habit. So this is a question where most of the patients are not able to give even a tentative range. So then you ask the patients how many rupees they spend on their tobacco habit in a day, and they will be able to tell you that. You simply multiply it by 30 and you give them that this is the amount you are spending, and you could have much better use for this amount of money if you wish to quit your habit. Based on the amount of nicotine present in each of the forms of tobacco, we need to make a note of the approximate total nicotine intake of the individual per day. This helps us in deciding the doses of the nicotine replacement therapy which we will be using. Then another thing that we note down is we always ask the patient how many individuals are there in your house, how many animals you have as pets in your house, because all of these are exposed to your secondhand smoking if you are using smoke form of tobacco. So secondhand smoking is a form wherein the smoke which is emitted by the cigarette and exhaled by the patient, which also contains nicotine, is inhaled by people around the patient who are not smoking. So this is second-hand smoking. And third-hand smoking is basically once the patient has finished smoking, there are a lot of there's a gaseous aerosol which is spread around in the area where the patient was smoking. So this residue settles down on all the surfaces in that area, and say there are pets in the house, or if you have small kids in the house, these kids and pets start touching all this residue, and if they put their paws or hands into their mouth, it has been seen to a great extent that even third-hand smoking can affect pets and babies. So once this much is done, the next thing to do is you maintain every visit that the patient makes to you. You make entries for the following columns in this chart form, so that the patient has a comparative analysis of what he or she is doing. You mention the date at each visit, the figures from test for the first time for the first tobacco intake since waking, total tobacco consumption since the first hour after waking, total tobacco consumption in the day, the withdrawal symptoms that the patient has felt if the patient has started tapering the tobacco intake, has the patient felt any withdrawal symptoms or not? And if the symptoms are there, what is the consequent improvement in health also that the patient is noticing? So I personally feel that having everything put down on paper wherein the patient can understand and see for himself or herself really helps to keep the patients motivated. Then you should also explain them about health problems such as cancer, cardiac diseases, respiratory diseases, impotence, and the effects of second and third hand smoking. Now, once all of this is done, this is where you inform the patient about the habit, the ill effects of the habit. Now, the next step is understanding how ready the patient is to quit. So there is a saying that you can get the horse to the well, but you cannot make the horse drink the water. So the patient has to be willing, patient has to show even 10% inclination towards quitting the habit. Only at that point of time can we help the patient quit the habit. So there are various tools available, one of them being the readiness ruler. So you ask the patient to quantify everything. On a scale of 0 to 10, you ask the patient how important it is for the patient to quit their habit of tobacco and why is it, what are the reasons why the patient feels it will give some sort of positive impact on their life. You also ask them about their expense on tobacco. So again, on this ruler itself, 0 to 3, reading shows a low readiness and such patients just require constant follow-up. So every time you see this patient, you just ask them, have you considered quitting the habit? How are you doing? Are your or the medical conditions you suffer from showing any improvement since you've not quit the habit? Then on a scale, if you see the reading of 4 to 7, patients who are moderately ready, these are the patients who need a little bit of push and motivation. And these are the patients who will easily convert to go on the path of tobacco de-addiction. Coming to the scores of 8 to 10, are patients who are absolutely ready to quit. They just need a little amount of motivation and the correct action plan to go on this journey. Then the next thing to also understand is the stages of readiness to change. So this is a general stage of readiness to change, wherein we understand when we speak to the patient, whether the patient is in the stage of pre-contemplation, that is not planning to quit in the next 6 months. These patients, again, only and only require repeated sensitization towards tobacco de-addiction. Those who are in the contemplation phase and are considering to quit in the 6 months, next 6 months need some sort of motivation. Those who are in the preparation phase are those who are planning to quit within the next 30 days and they have set a date to quit. These are patients who will really benefit with counseling since they have set a target for themselves and they have probably also started tapering their intake of tobacco so as to come to the figure of 0. Then comes the action phase. These are patients who have already quit tobacco and are in the first 6 months since they have quit. So these patients require motivation and regular follow-up. And lastly, the maintenance phase. So these are patients who have quit for more than 6 months and these still require some sort of motivation to stay de-addicted from the habit, and they need some sort of support group where they can share their experiences with other users and they can explain to them themselves that how our lives have changed after we have quit the habit. Then what are the options that the patient has when the patient thinks of quitting the habit? The first and the most commonly used technique is cold turkey, where one fine day the person says that, okay, I am going to now let my willpower do the talking. I am going to quit my habit all of a sudden without any tapering, without anything externally, without any external help. Then the next option that the patient has is the self-help and the tapering option, wherein the patients will either take help from a self-help book, or there are a lot of mobile applications available nowadays which help to quit the habit, or they might speak to someone who has quit his or her habit, and these patients might slowly start tapering and quit. And lastly, there are patients who might need some sort of professional help to get through their journey. So this is where the tobacco cessation program comes into picture. Now, keeping the patient motivated is of paramount importance. Often we have seen that a lot of healthcare professionals get agitated when the patient mentions the habit of smoking. This is a deterrent to the patient to seek help from the healthcare professional to quit the habit. They feel very embarrassed that, oh, the doctor is not happy with the habit. But rather, we should show some kind of empathy to the patients that, okay, I see that you have this problem of tobacco and you should know that there are people available to help you. to quit your habit. So that makes a lot of difference. Then coming to the 5 R's. So patients who are motivated enough to seek professional help, the first step that they come to is the counseling step and the cognitive behavioral changes. So there you need to explain to them the relevance to pertaining to them individually of why quitting is going to make a positive difference to their life, the risk that they stand at, the losses that they stand at facing if they continue the habit, the rewards that they will gain in terms of health. Also, it is important to inform the patient that there are going to be certain roadblocks. For example, if a patient is working at an MNC where every day post lunch there is a smoking break taken by all the colleagues, so he might, out of fear of feeling left out of his peer group, he might feel obliged to go there. So we have to note down all these roadblocks that a patient might face. Probably there might be another patient who might come with the excuse that, okay, every morning when I go to work walking, I see the pan tapri there, and that's why, I have this urge to go and buy my tobacco fix for the day. So we need to identify what are the potential problems that the patient might face, the potential triggers for relapse, and we need to, before the patient is put on the program, the patient needs to be educated that, okay, if this is a problem you face, this is how you come around that problem and you go ahead. And lastly, repetition. You need to keep nagging the patient in a very polite but firm manner to repeat his good behavior and quit the habit. Also, we need to show some sort of tangible benefits to the patient. So if a patient has decided that I'm going to quit, we need to inform the patient that, okay, in the next half an hour, your blood pressure is going to fall slightly. Your pulse is going to get slightly on a normal range. Your hands and feet will start to warm up. These are the points which the patient can realize immediately. So he will have more faith in the system that, yes, what I am doing is bad. And there is immediate response that my body is giving once I have decided to quit the habit. So all the time lapses on which you can have some sort of measurable benefit to the patient, you need to keep reminding the patient of these measurable benefits, which the patient should be able to appreciate himself or herself. Now coming to the pharmacologic management, when and how to use drugs. The answer is very simple. For when to use, you use drugs for patients who show some sort of withdrawal symptoms when you start tapering their intake of tobacco. You also use drugs when you have patients who have relapsed with only behavioral management. So in a nutshell, we basically use tobacco de-addiction medicinal therapy for those patients who, in addition to the counseling and the behavioral management, need some sort of extra help and motivation. So coming to the options that we have for the same, the first options that we have are the first line of nicotine replacement therapy. So these are available in the form of nicotine patches, lozenges, gums, sprays, and inhalers. All of these work by the mechanism of providing an alternate source, by being an alternate source of nicotine into the bloodstream, so that the patient gets de-addicted from the habit of using the actual form of tobacco that the patient was on. So this is the line of action of nicotine replacement therapy, or NRT. Then in the first line of drugs, we also have some non-nicotine drugs, which are bupropion and varenicline. Bupropion is an antidepressant and it inhibits the serotonin and dopamine uptake. And varenicline is also having a nicotine antagonist effect. So because of this, the uptake of nicotine is again prevented. Then you also have second line drugs such as clonidine and nortriptyline. And both of these have the effect of adrenergic effect as well as antidepressant effect. So these are basically used in patients who are showing major side effects of withdrawal and depression signs during withdrawal. And there are other newer drugs such as selegiline and nicamylamine. Both of these are MAO inhibitors which also help in blocking the dopamine pleasure pathway. So now coming to the first line of drugs, you have nicotine patches, inhalers, gums, lozenges, nicotine nasal spray. So all of these are basically going to replace the exogenous nicotine by an artificial form. So each of these comes with its own set of side effects, because of which it is important to understand each individual patient's medical history before we start them on either of it. the dosage also. So the dosage that is mentioned in the table here is a general dosage. Our aim when we give NRT is to be able to somewhat match the nicotine levels that were maintained in the patient's body as a result of the habit by these external nicotinous sources, nicotine sources. So that is how the dosage is. So there is no fixed dosage that, okay, if you're using nicotine gum, you need to use 2 or 4 milligrams, one piece for every 1 to 2 or for all the patients. That is not going, it is not a generalized line of action. It has to be customized based on each individual. Of course, we do not cross the daily maximum dose that is there, that is being given by each brand and for each drug, but it has to be, it is a custom made package for each individual patient based on their requirements. Also, which NRT to use is another question. So patients who have had a very high nicotine dependence, it is always advisable to use a nicotine patch because it gives a sustained release of nicotine over a period of 24 hours, or there are even patches available for a period of 16 hours. Then coming to the nicotine inhaler. So those patients who are deriving the kick of smoking from re-inhaling the smoke again. For these patients, it is always good to use the nicotine inhaler because it also gratifies the action of inhaling it again. Then coming to the nicotine gum. Nicotine gum is usually preferred for patients who chew their tobacco or who park their tobacco in their buccal mucosa. So nicotine gum basically is available in 2 and 4 milligram packages, and each gum needs to be chewed for a certain amount of time and then parked in the buccal mucosa so that it is absorbed. The same situation is there for the nicotine lozenges. So these are also absorbed through the buccal mucosa. So all of these therapies, including the lozenges and the gums, these are used for the patients who are using some sort of oral stimulatory form of tobacco. Then coming to the nicotine nasal spray. So those of the patients who are using the nicotine spray, even those who are using cigarettes, they will have a gratification while using the spray because it brings the hand to mouth action of smoking. Then coming to the non-nicotine based drugs which are in the first line. So bupropion is a antidepressant drug, and this drug is usually helpful when it is used before the patient starts quitting the habit. Because of this drug, the patient will be on a much higher chance of leaving the habit. So there have been a lot of studies which have shown that bupropion and nicotine NRTs, when used together, will give a much higher chance of success in the quitting of tobacco. Then coming to varenicline, again, varenicline is slightly under the radar of the FDA because they are having, there were recent studies in 2008 which have shown that some patients have been having a feeling of suicide after intake of this drug. So currently, we would not really suggest the use of varenicline, but it was recently approved by the FDA. Now coming with withdrawal, relapses and failures. So withdrawal is something that is inevitable once a patient decides to quit tobacco, and the withdrawal is directly going to be proportional to the dependence of the patient on the tobacco. So the patient needs to be informed that the willpower needs to be strong. The patient needs to form a support team. The patient needs to be told that form a support team with your friends, relatives, colleagues, and ask them to provide you with some sort of reward for quitting your habit. Then the patient should be also taught to take help from mobile applications and self-help books. Patients should also be encouraged to take up some form of new hobby or some activity or learn some breathing techniques in order to overcome the urge of tobacco use. So also, if you inform the patient about the withdrawal symptoms in advance, it is always helpful because it is not a surprise to the patient, and if the patient knows what they're going to feel, they will be more prepared to cope with it. So if a patient has, within the first 2 weeks, the patient is usually going to have urges to use tobacco. So positive reinforcement helps. Taking a glass of water, chewing some gum, taking some seeds at that time will help. After 2 weeks, there's going to be headache and drowsiness. So the patient needs to be taught some sort of breathing techniques, meditation, warm baths, and relaxing exercises. In about 4 weeks' time, the patient is going to start feeling irritable, restless. So again, meditation, exercising, drinking some water is going to help. Also, there is going to be a lot of constipation. So constipation sets in from week 4 onwards, and these patients need to have a fiber-rich diet, have a lot of water intake, and use a mild laxative. Also, around the 10th week is when the patient is going to start feeling more hungry, more thirsty, and there's going to be some amount of weight gain. So at this point in time, the patient needs to be encouraged to take up regular workouts, to have a fiber-rich diet, and concentrate on the gains in terms of health as compared to the weight gain. Then the 5 Ds that will help the patient during withdrawal and prevent relapse are delay. So whenever the patient has an urge to start the tobacco again, the patient should be told to delay the urge for as long as possible by either doing some sort of deep breathing, or to drink some water slowly, or to distract and do some other activity that is going to take the mind off the urge. And also, it is healthy to discuss urges with people within his or her support system. Now, in case of relapses and failures, the only option we have is to keep trying and trying again and again and again, because there is no foolproof way to success in any tobacco cessation therapy. So even if the patient fails, we should be empathetic towards them. We should motivate them to try again, and that is the only option that we have. And while doing that, we should always remind the patient that today is the first day of the rest of your life. Make your life tobacco free. So I would really take this opportunity to thank everyone at the IESRF. I would like to thank all the committee members, Dr. Jha sir, Dr. Amina Sultan ma'am, Nikita ma'am, and the wonderful audience today. And I'm really thankful for you to give someone as junior as me an opportunity to present at a platform like this. And thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Priyanka. It was such an elaborative lecture. Truly, I think you have covered everything, all the possibilities. We all deal with such patients, and not only the patients, even our family members, friends. Now we can maybe in a better way, after listening to your elaborative lecture, can in a better way maybe counsel them. So thank you once again. We will have a question and answer session after, after we are done with the plaque of appreciation and concluding, so that we'll get extensive time for that. So now I request our co-patron, Nikita ma'am, to please present the plaque of appreciation to Dr. Priyanka.
Thank you, Dr. Ketki ma'am. I'm very thankful for this opportunity to extend honor to Dr. Priyanka Engineer ma'am for her wonderful informative presentation on tobacco addiction to de-addiction, the way forward. Thank you ma'am for your presentation. And I would like to share a plaque of appreciation for you.
Thank you so much.
Over to you, Dr. Ketki.
Yeah. Now I would like to request our organizing chairman for today, respected Dr. Vinod sir, for his concluding remarks.
Thank you, everyone. All presenters, speakers regarding the tobacco. The knowledge gaps existing about the tobacco products and its prevention, and regarding the laboratory assessment as adequately filled by both speakers, or the respective speakers. We hope we'll work together in this aspect, how to prevent. There are a few existing questions in my mind regarding the prevention and as well as laboratory assessment. My first question to second speaker. I think even tobacco products, any kind of tobacco products have been banned to sell for under 18 years. I think it is covered in COTPA Act.
The Potpa.
Cigarette and other tobacco products act banning. There is a ban of sale of any kind of tobacco products under 18 years. I think it is there.
Yes, sir.
Educational institutions, it has covered already in public places. Smoking is banned in public places. Among that, even that is also covered. One more question is, you have shown some chewing gum, whether it is a nicotine replacement therapy or it is a drug to quit the habit.
No, sir, the nicotine.
Chewing gum. One of the slides, it was visible that chewing gum, whether it is a nicotine replacement therapy or it is a drug, because in nicotine replacement therapy, we are undertaking a few of the studies. In that, we came to know that even nicotine replacement therapy, chewing gum is one of the products which is used.
I guess Priyanka ma'am have some internet problems, so she is not connected with us. So can we have anyone opinion on that? Dr. Priyamda madam, would you like to answer? Yeah, ma'am, unmute yourself.
Dr. Priyanka has joined.
Sorry.
I think she
Yes,
would like to
she has
answer the
joined.
question.
Basically, I'm sorry, did I interrupt something else?
Yes, Dr. Priyanka, you can
Yes,
answer.
so, sorry, to answer to Dr. Vinod sir's question, yes, there are legislative laws that have prevented the sale of tobacco in and around education institutes, and there is a legal action taken against persons selling tobacco and tobacco products to individuals under the age of 18. But to be honest, these laws are just namesake on paper. They aren't really being implemented well. There is no follow-up being done after the laws have been set up. Also, to answer his next question about the nicotine replacement therapy, whether the gums are also nicotine replacement therapy, yes, nicotine gums are also a part of nicotine replacement therapy. How they work is that because the gum is providing nicotine to the patient's body, the patient does not feel the urge to use the tobacco in order to get that the nicotine in the bloodstream. So because of that, the patient starts breaking the habit of using the tobacco, but there is also a downside to especially the nicotine gums and the nicotine lozenges. And there is some sort of addiction that the patient even gets to the nicotine gums. That is the reason we should also push for the ban on sale of nicotine replacement therapy products over the counter. There are a lot of people who are addicted to nicotine gums recently, and hence nicotine replacement therapy should only and only be given under medical supervision.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Thank you for your answer. It's quite satisfactory. My another question to Priyamvada madam, if you are there or if you are not logged up, which sample is best, madam, for laboratory assessment? Whether it is a salivary sample or blood sample, urinary sample, or breath, which would be the better?
Unmute yourself, please.
Like it depends upon like your research model, what you want to do. For my point of view, urine is the best sample, but it can be tested in collection and other issues Analysis, other issues will not be there. With saliva,
Is
what
the
procedure you are, sorry?
Ma'am, there's an echo, whether uh, your mobile, anybody's mobile phone is in proximity with the laptop.
Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Like it depends upon your research module, how you want to do it. For laboratory point of view, urine is the best sample because the sample collection will not be a issue. You can collect large quantity. Transportation will not be as much difficult. Most of the people opt for the salivary samples. For the laboratory point of view, cell analysis of saliva is also in the same way as doing urine sample. Then your collection procedure should be accurate, like that passive rolling method, or how you are collecting the sample, proper volume has come or not, edible and anything other things should not come along with the sample. It's up to the research module how you want to do it. Like in the second-hand smoke, I have done in urine sample also, in saliva sample also, and in the saliva of the pregnant woman, I have found considerable level of cotinine when they are exposed to the second-hand smoke.
Yeah, madam has already answered many questions in the chat box. Can we have more questions?
Thank you. No problem. It's fine. It's both speakers have presented excellently, and even the answers were also satisfied. We hope we will work more in the tobacco research, tobacco research team in future also. Thank you very much.
Yes, Dr. Jha, you have to unmute yourself first.
Well, I had few suggestions, like I am an orthopedic surgeon, and Dr. Priyanka has rightly said that the first counseling center is your clinic chamber. So whosoever is consulting his patient in whatsoever specialty, you must put up a question regarding smoking. You must talk about the ill effects, at least concerning your department, to that patient, like what I say, that I am an orthopedic surgeon, your bones are going for osteoporosis. So that means everyone understands here, bones are becoming weak. And a weak bone is likely to sustain a fracture either routinely, pathologically, or during an accident. Such a bone of a smoker, it is evidence-based that fracture is likely to unite after a prolonged time. You operate once, it will not unite. You operate second time and third time, then only union takes place. So you have to warn it this way. Another point that I keep on telling, rheumatoid arthritis, that is Gathia, is a definite sequelae of smoking or tobacco chewing. So the patient has to be warned against the diseases that you are sure of. Second suggestion is, we very frequently say, child is the father of man. What I mean to say is here that we do not have many children nowadays. You have either one or two, hardly three. So you love your child. If in the school curriculum, there are talks regarding the ill effects of smoking or tobacco chewing, and you can take an assessment from the child itself. Are their parents, mind you, I include ladies also, because during the last 20 years, smoking and tobacco chewing was popularized amongst ladies too. So take a census from the child that are their parents smokers? And then during parent-teacher meeting, after some time, you also discuss this issue as a teacher with the parents and train those small minds, the kids, to request their parents to stop smoking. Maybe this helps. So these are my two suggestions. Dr. Ketki? Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a nice, such really, really good suggestions. I think the best motivators are the kids for any man to quit any kind of bad behavior. I would also like to know, is there any role of diet? I mean, both Dr. Priyamvada ma'am and Priyanka, doctor, can answer this. Is there any role of diet in quitting tobacco? Because not everybody can go for those pharmacological agents. So what can be incorporated in day-to-day diet? I have read that dark chocolate, etc., helps, you know, to carve that feeling. So can really a diet play an important role?
Ma'am, would you like to answer that or should I take it?
Sorry?
Would Dr. like to take the question or should I go ahead?
Any which ways, I mean, you both also can give your inputs. That's perfectly fine.
Ma'am, would you like to go first, please?
Take it. Priyanka, you can take it.
Okay. So basically what happens is dark chocolate is again something that works on the dopamine pathway. Any kind of food that secretes, that increases the secretion of dopamine in the body is going to temporarily help you to get rid of the urge for the time being, for so long as that food has been consumed and not been metabolized in the body completely. So it is, if you say that chocolate is going to help, it's just going to help a temporary craving. It's not going to constantly provide the nicotine replacement in the body for the patient to wean off the habit. It may help in the sense of just getting through, delaying the urge.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Priyanka. Are there any other questions that can be asked? There's one question in the chat box that nicotine chewing gums are also addictive. How to deal with that?
That is the reason, ma'am, I mentioned that nicotine replacement therapy should always be under medical supervision. And right now, the problem that we are facing is since these gums and lozenges are sold over the counter at any medical store, patients have started buying these instead of the tobacco products and using them to achieve the kick. Eventually, with nicotine replacement therapy, also there is some amount of nicotine that's going into the body, which is that is preventing the withdrawal. But the important thing is when it's done under medical supervision, there is a progressive tapering and weaning off of the nicotine replacement therapy drug also. So that is the reason it becomes addictive if it is not taken under proper medical supervision.
Thank you, Dr. Priyanka. Dr. Jha sir has another, I think, question.
Well,
maybe.
Yes, the question is that what is the appropriate time, age-wise, disease-wise, when we should go for de-addiction drive? I am reminded of a situation when I had gone to an intensive care unit of a heart hospital. What had happened, the elderly person whom I had been to see him, he was craving for a cigarette. And he told me, look at my son. He is not giving me a piece of cigarette. He was only asking for a piece of cigarette. And look at what happened to the neighboring bed. That gentleman is no more, and he was also crying for a last puff of cigarette, which he was denied. So, when should we start this de-addiction drive? In the intensive care unit of cardiology? Yes, my question to any of the two speakers.
Dr. Priyanka, you can take it.
So ideally, this colleague made this statement that the have is started and the next to stop. An individual is that it is always advisable to take it with a pinch of salt and start from the motivation to stop. Because for tobacco addiction to success, what it is to quit the habit.
There is some internet glitches.
Glitches. Yeah. Yes. Yes. There's one more question. Dr. Priyanka ma'am can maybe answer that. By Dr. Jyotsna said that even in text it is written that capsicum intake can reduce the craving for cigarette. Is it true?
Ma'am, unmute yourself.
I think I'm not in tobacco NRT therapy. I'm in tobacco testing only. So I think Dr. Priyanka can better answer it. I don't.
Okay. Yeah, she's back, I guess. Dr. Priyanka.
Yes, sorry, there is some issue with the internet connection. I'm sorry, I missed the question.
No, that's perfectly fine. Well, there's a question in the chat box where Dr. Jyotsna said that even in texts, it is written that capsicum intake can reduce the craving for the cigarette. Is it right?
Ma'am, I'm honestly not very aware of this, but now that you mentioned this, this is something I will read up on.
Thank you, Dr. Priyanka. Any other question by any other people or?
I guess lots of questions are answered in the chat box itself.
Yes, itself. Yes.
I request Dr. Amina ma'am to present a plaque of appreciation to moderator.
It's my pleasure and my honor to give a small token of appreciation to a very sweet moderator, very patient moderator, doing moderation as well as handling her child also, that the domestic obligation also. I'm really pleased to see that both the things being managed at the same time.
Thank you.
Can we have the video of the plaque? So here we present to you Dr. Ketki, token of appreciation for your wonderful moderation. Thank you. You deserve a very well applause.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you, ma'am. That's really sweet and very considerate of whole ISRF team and the speaker to let me perform all the duties, the multitasking thing. Thank you, everyone. I would now like to request respected Dr. Lalit sir, organizing co-secretary for this program and an executive member of ISRF to present his vote of thanks for the ceremony.
Thank you everyone for this wonderful webinar. Thank you both the presenters, Dr. Priyanka and Dr. Premvada. You have put all your efforts in making this task very simple to understand, and I am sure people must be having much learning from this. At every year around 8 million people in the world, they go die just because of this tobacco chewing and as well as tobacco using. But we must remember life is a precious gift of nature. We should value our life and should not waste in doing the senseless and meaningless things. Tobacco can make you happy for sometimes or give you pleasure for sometimes, but a healthy person with no such habits can lead to a good and a happy life and go far in life. We are very much thankful to ISRF for making this Tobacco Day memorable as a webinar, because it will surely motivate people to live their lives tobacco free. The COVID-19 pandemic has led to millions of the tobacco users saying they want to quit. Commit to quit today and sign the place with us that they want to quit, because this is the only way we can win the battle. COVID predominantly affects the lungs and smoking too damages the lungs. The saying goes that quitters never win. But I would say in case of tobacco, quitters are the real winners. When the news came out that smokers were more likely to develop severe disease in COVID-19, it triggered millions of the smokers worldwide to want to quit tobacco. But without our adequate support, quitting can be incredibly challenging. So if anyone wants to embark on a journey of quitting this harmful habit, the conditions could not be more conducive at this time if they want to quit. And an honest effort is made by ISRF And we all congrats to you for making such a big achievements in motivating people to quit the smoke on this World Tobacco Day. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Lalit sir. Thank you, everyone, all the audience, those who have fetched time, out of their schedules on a Sunday evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our president and all the dignitaries, those who were there. Most importantly, thank you to our wonderful, wonderful eminent speakers for all those elaborative talks that they have given. So, Nikita ma'am, can we?
Yeah, I have an announcement for the participants who are joining through Facebook and YouTube. They can just receive an feedback form after the end of this webinar. So you just fill it and submit to the portal. Then you can able to download your certificates. Thank you all, and have a great time ahead.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Thank you, everyone.